My name is Ron Kim. I am the member of the State Assembly representing this part of Queens. I am so honored and happy to welcome my good friend Andrew Yang to Queens and to officially endorse him for New York City mayor. You know, when Andrew and I first met a few years ago, I thought, who is this guy with non-incrementalistic ideas to eradicate poverty? You see, for a long time, our country, state, and city's policies have been held hostage to a framework of austerity by design. I wondered if anyone could succeed to eliminate the notion that humanity's poverty is not a result of scarcity, but instead of a result of priorities dictated by the rich. But again, as I continue, throughout all this pain, the billionaires became trillionaires. Many know that New York City is the richest city in the world. I also say it is the cruelest. Trickle-down economics is a sham. It is time for bold policies that center around New Yorkers closest to the pain, and that's why I'm proud to endorse Andrew's policies on decriminalizing sex work, racist rezonings, public banking, saving small businesses, and of course, New York City's rollout of our own basic income. Our cities in pain and poverty cannot be invisible. My community's poverty and pain cannot be invisible. When Andrew comes to Flushing, he's not here for photo ops with bubble teas. He's here to be at the site where a young sex worker harassed by Vice NYPD leaped to her death. He's here to see the massive luxury developments that have displaced longtime residents and small businesses. He's here to see where a mile-long line forms in front of our food pantry. He's here to center policies to serve the most vulnerable members of my community, because our poverty and pain cannot remain invisible to the top executive of our city. I am proud to endorse Andrew Yang for mayor.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron Kim. Thank you, Queens. Thank you, New York City. It's tremendous to be here, and Ron Kim is a true fighter for the people. I gotta pick a side. I'll put it this way. Ron Kim is a true fighter for the people. What can you say about Ron? I'm gonna tell a few stories about Ron, but one thing is this man tackled a mugger in 2015. Like, that's the kind of person Ron is. He's a leader of principle, of character, and of vision. He has taught me a lot in our time together. And I'm going to tell you a few things that Ron has shown me here in Queens. Last week, he brought me to a restaurateur and owner. Last week, he brought me to see to a restaurateur and owner who had run a restaurant for 35 years and had helped create a life for herself and her family. And now that restaurant is in danger of closing after 35 years. She's been hanging on for months. She's been trying to make it work, but she said, look, I don't know if there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And it's not just her business, it's thousands and thousands of small businesses and restaurants all around New York City. We need to do everything we can to help families like hers be able to make decisions that will be right for our public safety during this pandemic, but also gives them actual security and a path forward. Ron and I just toured the largest food pantry in Queens with lines around the blocks. A food pantry that was designed to feed 1,000 families is now being asked to feed 10 times that many. They have pallets of food that they have to bring from a block because their space, which is a repurposed community center in public housing that was closed for years, is not situated close to the roadside, so they have to bring all the pallets, and there is a small army of volunteers sorting through that food and putting it into bags and boxes so that other families can have some kind of sustenance during this pandemic. That should not be the case in the richest city in the history of the world. We can do better than that. And the third thing that Ron showed me just moments ago was a place where a young migrant worker plummeted to her death under circumstances that we can all see were not just hers alone. There are many people working as migrant workers in the sex industry that have been victimized and harassed. We need to decriminalize sex work here in New York City to show a model for what the better approach is. Right now, these workers are being pushed into the shadows and being killed, mistreated, systematically marginalized. Their pain is being ignored by our city and our community, and we can and must do better. These are just some of the things I have learned from Ron. Ron, I have to say, you know, when we first got to know each other, it took me a moment to realize just how big your vision is. I thought I had a pretty big vision, but I would say that you're going to keep teaching me things for a long time to come. And hopefully we can open New York City's eyes to the fact that this is not the future we have to accept for ourselves. There is no reason in a city with resources as vast as this one that there are lines around the block for food pantries, that there are so many families in extreme poverty. We can alleviate that poverty, and that is my pledge as mayor. We will alleviate extreme poverty in New York City and have a guaranteed minimum income that was championed by Martin Luther King and many others. It is decades and generations overdue, but we will make it happen. This campaign is about building an economy that works for the people of this city. So many people were left behind even before the pandemic, but the pandemic has magnified and amplified those inequities to levels that are unconscionable. Really, if you look around our city, you see scenes that should shock your conscience. It does not have to be this way. This is a dangerous pandemic, but we owe it to ourselves to take care of our people and then accelerate our comeback from COVID. We need to be the COVID recovery city and open smart, open safely, open humanely. These are the principles that Ron has been championing and that I will be thrilled to champion as the mayor of New York City, the greatest city in the world. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ron Kim, my friend.
What's your thoughts on the current vaccine protocols? And as mayor, what would your protocols and wishes to enact to help the people of New York, what would they be?
I think a lot of New Yorkers are frustrated by the vaccination process thus far. And I think a lot of us want the state and the city to get on the same page about the best way to roll out vaccinations. Many of us completely believe that we should be targeting vulnerable populations, but we all think also that there are different ways you could identify folks who should be vaccinated. There are workers in that food pantry that are handling food and are going to be feeding thousands of families. I think most of us would agree that it would be tremendous if they were vaccinated. Most of us would consider them essential workers. So I wish that the protocols were more reflective of the situations and realities that people are facing every day, and that the state and city were better able to coordinate. As mayor, I will be intent on working very closely with the state to make sure that New Yorkers are not frustrated. Hopefully by then the vaccination process will be complete. Oh, one of the things I will be most proud of is if this mayoral campaign activates the Asian American community of New York City politically. And the reality is Asian Americans vote in New York City at lower levels than other groups. And that is something I would love to change. I believe this campaign can help change it. I think having leaders like Ron Kim endorsing the campaign will be tremendously helpful. My campaign is going to invest in the Asian American community here in New York City and let them know that this race is important. This race is important to Queens, it's important to New York City, it's important to New Yorkers of every background. But I think that what we've seen nationally, where Asian Americans were the swing vote in Georgia that helped win the entire U.S. Senate for Democrats, that's a sign of what Asian Americans can do if we are activated politically. That has not happened in New York City at a high enough level, and I am going to try to change that in this particular cycle.
Actual last question.
Yeah, I'm Gabby with the Queens Courier. How do you plan on working with Commissioner Shea, and are you in favor of defunding the police?
New York City is facing crises on several fronts right now. And I have not had a chance to meet with Commissioner Shea as yet. I'm
on record as saying that I believe the NYPD could use a civilian commissioner who's a bit more independent in culture and background, mirrored after the federal level, where you have a civilian head of the military. And I think that's been very positive. New York City should follow suit. I think that most New Yorkers would agree that we've been underinvesting in our communities for years and generations at multiple levels, in terms of education, health, mental health, housing, substance abuse resources, affordable housing. I mean, there's so many ways that we should be investing resources. And I think most New Yorkers would agree that we have been over-investing in measures that may not actually be making us safer.